Greetings. In this episode, we're going to talk about skidding, front tire skids and rear tire skids. Today's technology, in most of our motorcycles, we have ABS, right? So sometimes we've let the proper technique slide because we know we have the safety net. If we abruptly apply that front brake or rear brake, if we stomp on it, our ABS is going to save us. But let's talk about proper technique and what it could mean for us, especially if we don't have that technology available or if the technology fails, right? So too much pressure on the front brake lever can produce a skid. To keep from skidding, we must use that front brake lever progressively, not dynamiting it, not going 1, 3, but going 1, 2, 3, progressively squeezing to that good front brake. If that front brake lever is squeezed too quickly, without weight transferring forward to give us more traction, it can cause that front tire skid. Front tire skids, they're generally very short in nature. I've seen this happen. You dynamite the front brake, it locks up, and it's immediate loss of control. Unless you realize this immediately, and to recover from that, you would have to immediately release the front brake lever and then properly apply with less pressure. Okay. Generally, it's short in nature, however. So as soon as you lock that front tire up, the bike starts to go down, and it goes down pretty quickly. Okay. Rear tire skid. Because when you brake and you brake aggressively, the weight is transferring forward on the motorcycle to the front tire. The rear tire is getting lighter, giving you less traction on the rear tire in order to use braking. And if you apply too much rear brake pressure, with that rear end getting lighter, it's easy to lock up that rear tire. So for a front brake lockup, we need to immediately release and reapply with less pressure. If you have a rear wheel lockup, it sounds cool sometimes, maybe, I guess, if you want to be doing that sort of thing. But if your rear tire is staying in line with the front, again, you have to have this sense of awareness. But if your rear wheel is in line with your front, you can release that rear brake lever and regain traction with that rear tire. If, however, you lock up the rear tire and the back end of the motorcycle starts sliding out sideways, if it's not in line with the front tire, you need to keep the rear brake locked until you come to a stop. If your rear tire is out of alignment with the front tire and you release the rear brake pedal, the bike snaps back into alignment, throwing you off the motorcycle. Okay? Typically doing a high side. You don't want to do that, right? So again, I guess it's always, if you don't know if it's in line or not, just keep it locked, that rear wheel locked until you come to a stop. Again, if you're in a straight line, you can just ease off on that foot pedal. So we're going to do a little bit of a exercise to sort of get the knowledge of why it's important to progressively squeeze to give us that front brake loading, that traction we need to get us some good braking. So let's try this once. So what I'd like you to do is stand up and stand with more weight on one foot than the other. On the other foot, we want to make this is our front tire, okay? So without a lot of weight on that front tire, we haven't started progressively squeezing yet, drag it across the ground. How much traction do you have? Now, if we were to abruptly apply the front brake, it's easy to lock and we can get that skid, right? It's easy to skid the front tire. But now let's progressively squeeze our front brake and put a little more weight on it. So put a little more weight by progressively squeezing and now try to drag it. What do you get? You have more traction, right? The front end is starting to squat down. Your front tire has more contact patch with the ground, giving you more traction, giving you the ability to brake even more without locking that rear tire. Now put even more weight. We're in a heavier braking situation now. More weight and try to drag that foot across the ground. What do we get? It's more traction, more braking without locking up. So we want to progressively squeeze, do a 1, 2, 3 to get to that maximum braking if we need to, if we're in a situation that calls for that. Remember, if we don't have that weight and we go from 1 to 3, it's easy to skid that tire. It locks up. But if we can go 1, 2, 3, progressively getting that weight on that front tire, now we have that more traction. We can squeeze even harder without locking it up. And it brings us to a shorter distance stop. Braking, like anything, it's a fleeting skill. We can get better at it with practice. We're in the environment here in the Wisconsin, in our Great Lakes Regional Conference area, where it's starting to get cold out and we're starting to put our motorcycles away. I'm going to have mine out until the snow starts to fly and the salt gets on the road. But these are things we can practice. Certainly in the spring, or when we take out our bikes, we can get better at braking. Practice that progressive squeeze. We want to use both brakes simultaneously, right? So we want to be in the habit of front and rear brake together. That is going to bring us to the shortest distance stop that motorcycle is able to if we do it properly. Not just using front brake, not just using rear brake, but both brakes simultaneously. Have a progressive squeeze on that front brake lever. Have that light application on that rear brake pedal. Because again, the rear end is lightening up for that rear brake. So we just want to have that light application, but both brakes simultaneously can bring us to the stops that we need. Practice progressive squeeze of that front brake lever. Gear up for every ride, and as always, ride safe.